Okay, let's unpack this. We are living through a time of profound, sometimes unsettling change. There's a question bubbling just beneath the surface of our collective consciousness, one that feels both distant and, well, intensely personal. What will our jobs look like in the future? Or perhaps even more strikingly, will we even have jobs? We're often dimly aware of these massive technological shifts, artificial intelligence, biotechnology, that they feel like abstract concepts, almost like science fiction. But then you say the magic word jobs, and suddenly everyone snaps to attention. The sheer weight of mass unemployment, or even just the very real, immediate anxiety of personal employment, leaves nobody indifferent, right? Today, we're diving deep into these technological revolutions, exploring how information technology and biotechnology are poised to fundamentally reshape the job market, redefine human skills, and potentially society itself. It's a crucial conversation for you, our listener, as you navigate your own career trajectory and, prepare for what's coming next.
Absolutely. And a truly compelling aspect of this topic, I think, is the core debate. Is this time truly different from all previous industrial revolutions? Our mission today is to cut through the noise, maybe give you a clearer perspective. We're going to explore the conflicting views on automation's impact, really dig into the new, almost unbelievable capabilities of AI, and then, crucially, delve into some potential solutions and societal models for, well, a radically altered future of work. Think of this deep dive as your shortcut to being well-informed about some of the hardest trials humanity has ever encountered, directly impacting your career development and how you might prepare for future opportunities and challenges.
So let's plunge into the central question that keeps many awake at night, this looming shadow of automation. The core uncertainty is palpable. Are we on the verge of a terrifying upheaval where billions of people could become economically redundant? Or will automation continue to generate new jobs and greater prosperity for all, just as it has in the past? Historically, this fear of automation isn't new, is it? We can look back to the 19th century, to what's often called Luddite hysteria, where people worried machines would take all the jobs. And so far, for every job lost to a machine since the Industrial Revolution began, at least one new job was created, and our average standard of living has, well, increased dramatically. So why would this time be different? But here's where it gets really interesting, why there's some compelling arguments suggesting that, yes, this time it is fundamentally different.
Indeed. And here's why. Traditionally, humans have essentially two types of abilities, physical and cognitive. For a long time, machines primarily competed with us in raw physical labor. Think factories, farms. This left humans with an immense edge in cognitive skills. Things like learning, analyzing, communicating, and especially understanding human emotions. So as manual jobs in agriculture and industry were automated, new service jobs emerged that relied on those unique human cognitive capabilities. But now AI is beginning to outperform us in more and more of these cognitive skills. And yes, that includes understanding human emotions. This leads us to wonder, if machines can do both physical and cognitive tasks, what third field of activity can humans truly retain a secure edge in? Is there even a frontier AI can't conquer?
And it's not just about computers getting faster, which I think is the common misconception. This AI revolution is actually fueled by incredible breakthroughs across the life sciences and social sciences. We're talking neuroscience, behavioral economics, fields that have allowed scientists to, in a sense, hack humans. It's almost like they've uncovered the operating system behind our decisions.
It really is. What's truly fascinating here is how our understanding of human decision-making has evolved. It turns out, our choices from the food we eat to the partners we choose aren't the result of some mysterious free will. Not really. Instead, they result from billions of neurons in our brains, calculating probabilities in a split second. What we've often praised or held up as human intuition is, in reality, incredibly sophisticated pattern recognition. Think about it. Good drivers, bankers, or lawyers aren't relying on magical hunches. They're simply recognizing recurring patterns, spotting careless pedestrians, inept borrowers, or dishonest crooks, right? And it's been discovered that the biochemical algorithms of the human brain are far from perfect. They rely on heuristics, mental shortcuts, and even outdated circuits that were adapted to the African savanna, not the urban jungle. This is why even highly skilled professionals sometimes make what we perceive as, well, stupid mistakes.
Okay, so if intuition is just pattern recognition, then AI can absolutely outperform humans in those tasks. That makes sense. The old belief was that computers can never truly understand the immaterial spirit of human emotion. But if emotions and desires are, in fact, biochemical algorithms, predictable sequences of chemical reactions, then there's no inherent reason why computers can't decipher these algorithms and do so far better than any human. A driver predicting a pedestrian's intentions, a banker assessing a borrower's credibility, a lawyer gauging the mood at a negotiation table, they're not relying on magic. Their brains are recognizing biochemical patterns by analyzing facial expressions, tones of voice, hand movements, and maybe even body odors. An AI equipped with the right sensors could do all that far more accurately and reliably than a human ever could.
And this is exactly where the confluence or convergence, as you might say, of information technology and biotechnology becomes incredibly powerful. What brain scientists are learning today about parts of the brain like the amygdala, which plays a key role in processing emotions, and the cerebellum, crucial for movement and learning. These insights might enable computers to outperform human psychiatrists and bodyguards by, say, 2050. The profound implication for your career development is clear. Many jobs that were once thought secure because they required that human touch or intuition are now increasingly vulnerable. It's a fundamental shift in what we consider uniquely human capabilities in the workplace. It really is.
And it goes even beyond individual human replacement, doesn't it? AI also enjoys some uniquely non-human abilities that create difference of kind rather than just degree. I'm talking about two particular important ones: connectivity and updatability. Humans, being individuals, are notoriously difficult to connect to one another in real time, and it's even harder to make sure everyone is always up to date with the latest information or regulations. It's just messy. In contrast, computers aren't individuals in the same way, and it's incredibly easy to integrate them into a single, flexible network. So, what does this all mean for you and your future career? It's not millions of individual human workers being replaced by millions of individual robots and computers. Instead, individual humans are likely to be replaced by an integrated network. I shouldn't compare a single human driver to a single self-driving car, but rather a collection of human individuals to the abilities of an integrated network.
That's a great point. Let's consider self-driving vehicles as a case study. Human drivers, like all of us, are often unfamiliar with every changing traffic regulation, and we frequently violate them, let's be honest. Beyond that, every human vehicle is an autonomous entity, which means when two cars approach a junction, the drivers might miscommunicate their intentions and collide. The statistics are just staggering. Close to 1.25 million people are killed annually in traffic accidents globally. That's twice the number killed by war, crime, and terrorism combined. It's huge. And more than 90% of these accidents are due to very human errors: somebody drinking, somebody texting, falling asleep, or simply daydreaming at the wheel. The U.S. National Highway Traffic Safety Administration estimated that back in 2012, 31% of fatal crashes involved alcohol abuse, 30% involved speeding, and 21% involved distracted drivers. Human error, basically.
Wow. So the critical question becomes, how does AI solve this?
Well, self-driving cars, connected as part of a single algorithm, minimize miscommunication and collisions. They can talk to each other instantly. If a Ministry of Transport changes a rule, all self-driving vehicles can be easily updated simultaneously, and they will follow the new regulation to the letter, instantly. Replacing human drivers could reduce deaths and injuries by about 90%, saving 1 million lives every year. 1 million lives. It would be, frankly, madness to block this kind of progress just to protect human jobs. Well, we ultimately ought to protect our humans, not the jobs themselves, right? Redundant drivers will simply have to find something else to do.
And the same principle applies with immense potential to healthcare, I imagine. Imagine the challenge of updating all the human doctors globally about a new disease or a new medicine. It's almost impossible, right? The lag time is huge. But if you had 10 billion AI doctors in the world, each monitoring the health of a single human being, you could update all of them within a split second. They could even communicate feedback to each other on new developments, a kind of global, instantaneous medical collaboration, like a giant hive mind for medicine. Think of the 100 different AI doctors scenario. A patient in a remote village, maybe on the slopes of Kilimanjaro, could access not just one, but 100 different AI doctors through her smartphone. Their performance could be constantly compared, maybe an IBM doctor versus a Baidu doctor for a second opinion, right there on her phone. The potential societal benefits are immense, far better and cheaper healthcare for billions of people, especially those who currently receive no healthcare at all. A poor villager might actually come to enjoy far better care via their smartphone than the richest person in the world gets today from the most advanced urban hospital. It flips the script entirely.
You might object, of course, that by switching from individual humans to a computer network, we'd lose the advantages of individuality. That's a fair point. If one human doctor makes a wrong judgment, They don't harm all patients globally. But if all doctors are one single system and that system makes a mistake, the results could be catastrophic. What's particularly striking about this, though, is that an integrated computer system can actually maximize connectivity without losing the benefits of individuality. You can run many alternative algorithms on the same network, offering both efficiency and redundancy. Think of it like having multiple safety nets. The core principle remains. We protect humans, not jobs. Redundant workers will just have to find something else to do. This means, for your career, considering how your skills might adapt to a future where network effects and instantaneous updates are paramount, rather than relying on individual, isolated expertise, you need to think networked.
Okay, so if AI is coming for physical and increasingly cognitive tasks, are there any human bastions left? Is there still some unique human territory in the job market?
Well, at least in the short term. AI and robotics are unlikely to completely eliminate entire industries. It's not going to happen overnight. Jobs that require specialization in a narrow range of routinized activities will be automated, sure, we see that already. But it will be much more difficult to replace humans in less routine jobs that demand the simultaneous use of a wide range of skills and that involve dealing with unforeseen scenarios, things that require adaptability.
Like healthcare again, maybe?
Exactly. Take healthcare, for example. Many doctors primarily focus on processing information. They absorb medical data, analyze it, and produce a diagnosis. That's prime territory for AI. Nurses, in contrast, also need good motor and emotional skills to give a painful injection, replace a bandage, or even restrain a violent patient. That's much harder to automate effectively. So, we'll probably have an AI family doctor on our smartphone decades before we have a reliable nurse robot that can do all those things. The human care industry, which takes care of the sick, the young, and the elderly, is likely to remain a human bastion for a long time. In fact, as people live longer and have fewer children, care of the elderly will probably be one of the fastest growing sectors in the human labor market. So for your career development, focusing on roles that require physical dexterity, complex emotional intelligence, and genuine adaptability to unpredictable human needs might offer, well, a short-term respite at least.
Okay, care makes sense. What about creativity? That always comes up as uniquely human.
Right. And alongside care, creativity also poses particularly difficult hurdles for automation. We no longer need humans to sell us music. We can just download it directly. But the composers, musicians, singers, and DJs are still flesh and blood, mostly. We rely on their creativity not just to produce entirely new music, but also to choose among a mind-boggling range of available possibilities. Curation is still key. Nevertheless, in the long run, no job will remain absolutely safe from automation. Even artists should be put on notice. In the modern world, art is usually associated with human emotions, isn't it? We tend to think that artists are channeling internal psychological forces, and that the whole purpose of art is to connect us with our emotions or to inspire some new feeling. Consequently, we often judge art by its emotional impact on the audience. If we connect this to the bigger picture, what happens once external algorithms are able to understand and manipulate human emotions better than, say, Shakespeare, Frida Kahlo, or Beyonce?
Yeah, that's the key question. Because after all, emotions aren't some mystical phenomenon, as you said. They're the result of biochemical processes. So in the not too distant future, a machine learning algorithm could analyze the biometric data streaming from sensors on and inside your body. It could determine your personality type, your changing moods, and calculate the exact emotional impact a particular song, even a particular musical key, is likely to have on you.
Precisely. And music, of all forms of art, is probably the most susceptible to big data analysis because both its inputs and outputs lend themselves to precise mathematical depiction. The inputs are the mathematical patterns of sound waves, and the outputs are the electrochemical patterns, essentially the electrical activity of neural storms in your brain that correspond to emotions. It's all data. Within a few decades, an algorithm could go over millions of musical experiences and learn to predict exactly how particular sound inputs result in particular emotional outputs. So, imagine an algorithm keyed into your biometric data after a difficult experience, let's say a fight with your partner. It could perfectly curate a playlist, it could choose songs to deeply resonate with your mood, then subtly shift to melodies designed to uplift you, perhaps tapping into subconscious happy memories linked to certain sounds. This level of personalized emotional manipulation through art is, well, it's a truly radical concept. No human DJ could ever hope to match the skills of such an AI.
Okay, but you might object, right? You might say this AI would kill serendipity and lock us inside a narrow musical cocoon, just feeding us what it knows we like.
Yeah, that's a common concern. But no problem. You could easily adjust the algorithm to make, say, 5% of its choices completely at random. It could unexpectedly throw at you a recording of an Indonesian gamelan ensemble, a Rossini opera, or the latest K-pop hit, just to mix things up. Over time, by monitoring your reactions, the AI could even determine the ideal level of randomness to optimize exploration while avoiding annoyance, maybe layering it to 3% or raising it to 8%, whatever works best for you.
Okay, what about the goal? How would it decide if it should make you happy or sad?
Another good question. How would the algorithm establish its emotional goal? If you just fought with your partner, should it aim to make you sad or joyful? Would it blindly follow a rigid scale of good versus bad emotions? Maybe there are times when it's good to feel sad, right? Of course, the same question could be directed at human musicians and DJs. But with an algorithm, there are many interesting solutions. One option is to simply leave it to you, the customer. You can evaluate your emotions however you like, and the algorithm will slavishly follow your dictates, whether you want to wallow in self-pity or jump for joy. It might even learn to recognize your wishes even without you being explicitly aware of them, just based on your reactions.
Or, if you don't trust yourself, maybe you could set it to follow expert advice.
Exactly. You could instruct the algorithm to follow the recommendation of an eminent psychologist you trust. If you're processing a significant loss, the algorithm could walk you through, say, the official 5 stages of grief, subtly nudging your emotional state with precisely chosen musical pieces that correspond to each stage, like a therapeutic playlist generator.
Wow, and then it could start editing the music itself.
That's the next step. Algorithms could start tinkering with the songs and melodies themselves, changing them ever so slightly to fit your quirks. Perhaps you dislike a particular bit in an otherwise excellent song. The algorithm knows it because your heart skips a beat and your oxytocin levels, that hormone associated with bonding and well-being, drop slightly whenever you hear that annoying part. The algorithm could literally rewrite or edit out the offending notes just for you. In the long run, algorithms may learn how to compose entire tunes, playing on human emotions as if they were a piano keyboard. Using your biometric data, the algorithms could even produce personalized melodies, which you alone in the entire universe would appreciate. Music composed just for your biology.
That sounds both amazing and kind of creepy. It's often said that people connect with art because they find themselves in it. This could lead to surprising and somewhat sinister results if, say, a social media platform begins creating personalized art based on everything it knows about you. If a significant relationship ends, the platform could treat you to an individualized song about that particular person, rather than a generic one. The song might even remind you of real incidents from your relationship that nobody else in the world knows about. That feels invasive.
It does raise ethical questions, for sure. And personalized art might never fully catch on, because people might continue to prefer common hits that everybody likes. How can you dance or sing together to a tune nobody besides you knows, right? Community is important. But algorithms could prove even more adept at producing global hits than personalized rarities. By using massive biometric databases garnered from millions of people, the algorithm could know exactly which biochemical buttons to press in order to produce a global hit that would set everybody swinging like crazy on the dance floors. Optimized for mass appeal. If art is truly about inspiring or manipulating human emotions, few, if any, human musicians will have a chance of competing with such an algorithm because they cannot match it in understanding the chief instrument they are playing on, the human biochemical system.
So, will all this result in great art? That depends on your definition, I guess. If beauty is indeed in the ears of the listener, and if the customer is always right, then biometric algorithms stand a chance of producing the best art in history, objectively speaking, based on listener response. But if art is about something deeper than human emotions, if it should express a truth beyond our biochemical vibrations, then biometric algorithms might not make very good artists. But to be fair, nor do most humans make great art in that sense. The bar isn't Tchaikovsky, is it? In order to enter the art market and displace many human composers and performers, algorithms won't have to begin by surpassing Tchaikovsky. It will be enough if they outperform Britney Spears. Sorry, Britney. So for your career, even traditionally creative fields are not permanently safe. Humans will need to find new ways to collaborate with or leverage AI, or maybe discover forms of creativity that exist beyond mere algorithmic manipulation of emotions. It's a real challenge.
Definitely. Now let's talk about new jobs. Because the loss of many traditional jobs, even in fields like art and healthcare, will partly be offset by the creation of new human jobs. It's not all doom and gloom on that front. For example, general practitioners who focus on diagnosing known diseases will likely be replaced by AI doctors, as we discussed. But precisely because of that, There will be much more money available to pay human doctors and lab assistants to do groundbreaking research and develop new medicines or surgical procedures. This represents a shift to higher-level, more complex roles, moving away from routine diagnostics towards innovation.
Right, and AI might also help create new human jobs in another way. Instead of humans competing directly with AI, they could focus on servicing and leveraging AI. That makes sense. For instance, the replacement of human pilots by drones has eliminated some jobs, absolutely, but it has created many new opportunities in maintenance, remote control, data analysis, and cybersecurity. The U.S. Armed Forces, for example, need 30 people to operate every unmanned Predator or Reaper drone flying over Syria, while analyzing the resulting harvest of information occupies at least 80 people more. It's surprisingly human intensive. In 2015, the U.S. Air Force actually lacked sufficient trained humans to fill all these positions, and therefore faced an ironic crisis in manning its unmanned aircraft. The irony, of course, being that the unmanned aircraft still need plenty of human support.
Yeah, the terminology is a bit misleading sometimes. What's truly compelling here, though, is the potential for human-AI cooperation. The job market of 2050 might very well be characterized by human-AI cooperation rather than outright competition. In fields ranging from policing to banking, teams of humans plus AIs, often referred to as centaurs, could outperform both humans alone and computers alone. After IBM's chess program Deep Blue beat Garry Kasparov back in 1997, humans didn't stop playing chess, did they? Instead, thanks to AI trainers, human chess masters became better than ever, and at least for a while, these human AI teams outperformed both humans and computers in chess. AI might similarly help groom the best detectives, bankers, and soldiers in history. It suggests a future where our intelligence is augmented, not replaced.
Okay, I like the sound of centaurs. But, and this is a big problem for many people thinking about their career paths, right? The problem with all such new jobs is that they will probably demand high levels of expertise. And that means they won't solve the problem of unemployed, unskilled laborers. It creates a gap. Previous waves of automation allowed for more limited retraining. You could see the path. In 1920, a farm worker laid off due to mechanization could find a new job in a factory producing tractors. Okay, big change, but doable. In 1980, an unemployed factory worker could start working as a cashier in a supermarket. Again, learnable skills. These occupational changes were feasible because the move required only limited retraining, but in 2050, a cashier or textile worker losing their job to a robot will hardly be able to start working as a cancer researcher, a drone operator, or as part of a human AI banking team. It's just too big a leap. They simply won't have the necessary skills. In World War I, it made sense to send millions of raw conscripts to charge machine guns. Their individual skills mattered little. Today, despite the shortage of drone operators and data analysts, the U.S. Air Force isn't going to fill the gaps with Walmart dropouts, as the source material puts it rather bluntly. You wouldn't want an inexperienced recruit to mistake an Afghan wedding party for a high-level Taliban conference. The stakes are too high. Consequently, despite the appearance of many new human jobs, we might nevertheless witness the rise of a new useless class. That's a harsh term, but it captures the fear. We could actually get the worst of both worlds, suffering simultaneously from high unemployment and a shortage of skilled labor. Many people might share the fate not of 19th century wagon drivers who switched to driving taxis, but of 19th century horses who were increasingly pushed out of the job market altogether.
That's a stark comparison, but it highlights the potential scale of the disruption. And if we connect this to the bigger picture, it becomes clear that no remaining human job will ever be absolutely safe from the threat of future automation. Machine learning and robotics will continue to improve at an exponential rate. It's relentless. A 40-year-old unemployed Walmart cashier who, by dint of superhuman efforts, manages to reinvent herself as a drone pilot might have to reinvent herself again just 10 years later, because by then the flying of drones may also have been automated. This constant volatility will also make it more difficult to organize unions or secure labor rights. Think about it. Already today, many new jobs in advanced economies involve unprotected temporary work, freelancing, and one-time gigs, the gig economy. How do you unionize a profession that mushrooms and disappears within a decade? It's almost impossible. Similarly, human-computer centaur teams are likely to be characterized by a constant tug-of-war between the humans and the computers, instead of settling down to a lifelong partnership. Teams made exclusively of humans, like Sherlock Holmes and Dr. Watson, usually develop permanent hierarchies and routines that last decades. They find a rhythm. But a human detective who teams up with IBM's Watson computer system will find that every routine is an invitation for disruption, and every hierarchy an invitation for revolution. Yesterday's sidekick might morph into tomorrow's superintendent, and all protocols and manuals will have to be rewritten every year. Constant flux.
Wow. And that chess example you mentioned earlier, the centaurs, it didn't last forever, did it? A closer look at the world of chess might indicate where things are heading in the long run. It's true that for several years after Deep Blue defeated Kasparov, human-computer cooperation flourished in chess. The centaurs reigned. Yet in recent years, computers have become so good at playing chess that their human collaborators have lost their value and might soon become utterly irrelevant. On December 7, 2017, a critical milestone was reached. Not when a computer defeated a human at chess, that's old news, but when Google's AlphaZero program defeated the Stockfish 8 program. Stockfish 8 was the world computer chess champion for 2016. It had access to centuries of accumulated human experience in chess, as well as to decades of computer experience. It knew everything.
And it could calculate 70 million chess positions per second.
Yeah.
Just mind-boggling speed.
Right. In contrast, AlphaZero performed only 80,000 such calculations per second, much slower, relatively speaking. And its human creators never taught it any chess strategies, not even standard openings. It started blank. Rather, AlphaZero used the latest machine learning principles to self-learn chess by playing against itself. Millions and millions of games. Nevertheless, out of 100 games the novice AlphaZero played against Stockfish, AlphaZero won 28 and tied 72. It didn't lose even once. It crushed the reigning champ. Since AlphaZero learned nothing from any human, many of its winning moves and strategies seemed unconventional, even alien to human eyes. They may well be considered creative, if not downright genius. Can you guess how long it took AlphaZero to learn chess from scratch, prepare for the match against Stockfish, and develop its genius instincts? 4 hours.
4 hours. It's unbelievable.
It's not a typo. For centuries, chess was considered one of the crowning glories of human intelligence. AlphaZero went from utter ignorance to creative mastery in 4 hours without the help of any human guide. This is a profound shift. AlphaZero isn't the only imaginative software out there. Many programs now routinely outperform human chess players, not just in brute calculation, but even in creativity. In human-only chess tournaments, judges are constantly on the lookout for players who try to cheat by secretly getting help from computers. One of the ways to catch cheats is to monitor the level of originality players display. If they play an exceptionally creative move, the judges will often suspect that this cannot possibly be a human move. It must be a computer move. At least in chess, creativity is already the trademark of computers rather than humans. Hence, if chess is our coal mine canary, we are duly warned that the canary is dying. What is happening today to human AI chess teams might happen down the road to human AI teams in policing, medicine, and banking too. The profound takeaway here isn't just that AI can beat humans at chess. It's that AI can achieve genius-level creativity from scratch in mere hours, challenging our very definition of human intelligence and unique artistic contribution.
Absolutely. And consequently, creating new jobs and retraining people to fill them will not be a one-off effort. It's not like we fix it once and we're done. The AI revolution won't be a single watershed event after which the job market will just settle into a new equilibrium. Not at all. Rather, it'll be a cascade of ever bigger disruptions, wave after wave. Already today, few employees expect to work in the same job for their entire life. That idea is mostly gone. By coming 50, not just the idea of a job for life, but even the idea of a profession for life might seem antediluvian, incredibly outdated, like something from a distant ancient past. This leads us to wonder, even if we could constantly invent new jobs and retrain the workforce, will the average human have the emotional stamina necessary for a life of such endless upheavals? Change is always stressful, right? And the hectic world of the early 21st century has already produced a global epidemic of stress. We feel it everywhere. As the volatility of the job market and of individual careers increases, would people be able to cope? We would probably need far more effective stress reduction techniques, ranging from drugs through neurofeedback to meditation, just to prevent the sapiens' mind from snapping under the pressure. By 2050, a useless class might emerge, not merely because of an absolute lack of jobs or lack of relevant education, but also because of insufficient mental stamina to keep up. So for your career development, continuous learning and reinvention are necessary, yes, but emotional and mental resilience will become paramount. Embrace volatility, but also prepare for potential mental health challenges. That's a crucial part of the preparation.
Obviously, most of this is still speculation. We have to acknowledge that. At the time of writing, automation has disrupted many industries, but it hasn't resulted in massive unemployment everywhere. In fact, in many countries, unemployment is at a historical low, strangely enough. Nobody can know for sure what sort of impact machine learning and automation will have on different professions in the future, and it's extremely difficult to estimate the timetable of relevant developments. especially as they depend on political decisions and cultural traditions as much as on purely technological breakthroughs. So, even after self driving vehicles prove themselves safer and cheaper than human drivers, politicians and consumers might nevertheless block the change for years, perhaps decades. Inertia is powerful. However, we cannot allow ourselves to be complacent. It is dangerous just to assume that enough new jobs will appear to compensate for any losses. The fact that this has happened during previous waves of automation is absolutely no guarantee that it will happen again under the very different conditions of the 21st century. The potential social and political disruptions are so alarming that even if the probability of systemic mass unemployment is low, we should take it very seriously indeed. Think back to the Industrial Revolution in the 19th century. It created new conditions and problems that none of the existing social, economic, and political models could cope with. Feudalism, monarchism, and traditional religions were not adapted to managing industrial metropolises, millions of uprooted workers, or the constantly changing nature of the modern economy. They just couldn't handle it. Consequently, humankind had to develop completely new models, liberal democracies, communist dictatorships, and fascist regimes, and it took more than a century of terrible wars and revolutions to experiment with these models, separate the wheat from the chaff, and implement the best solutions. Child labor in Dickensian coal mines, the First World War, and the Great Ukrainian Famine of 1932 to 43 work constituted just a small part of the tuition fees humankind paid, a terrible price. The challenge posed to humankind in the 21st century by infotech and biotech is arguably much bigger than the challenge posed in the previous era by steam engines, railroads, and electricity. And given the immense destructive power of our civilization, we just cannot afford more failed models, world wars, and bloody revolutions. The stakes are simply too high now. This time around, the failed models might result in nuclear wars, genetically engineered monstrosities, and a complete breakdown of the biosphere. Consequently, we have to do better than we did in confronting the Industrial Revolution. We just have to.
Agreed. So potential solutions generally fall into three main categories, broadly speaking. First, what to do in order to prevent jobs from being lost. This is, well, it's an unattractive and probably untenable strategy in the long run because it means giving up the immense positive potential of AI and robotics. Nevertheless, governments could decide to deliberately slow down the pace of automation in order to lessen the resulting shocks and allow time for readjustments. It's a possibility. Technology is never deterministic, right? And the fact that something can be done doesn't mean it must be done. Government regulation can successfully block new technologies, even if they are commercially viable and economically lucrative. For example, for many decades, we have had the technology to create a marketplace for human organs. Such body farms could be worth hundreds of billions of dollars. Yet regulations have prevented free trade in human body parts, mostly. While a black market exists, it's far smaller and more circumscribed than what one might expect based purely on technology. So, slowing down buys time. That's option one.
Okay, option two, create enough new jobs.
Right. What to do in order to create enough new jobs to replace most of the losses. But as we noted earlier, economic entrepreneurship will have to be accompanied by a revolution in education and psychology. It's a huge undertaking. Assuming that the new jobs won't just be government sinecures, essentially, positions requiring little or no work but providing a steady income, they will probably demand high levels of expertise. And as AI continues to improve, human employees will need to repeatedly learn new skills and change their profession. Lifelong learning becomes essential. Governments will have to step in, both by subsidizing a lifelong education sector and by providing a safety net for the inevitable periods of transition. If a 40-year-old ex-drone pilot takes 3 years to reinvent herself as a designer of virtual worlds, she may well need a lot of government help to sustain herself and her family during that time. This kind of scheme is currently being pioneered in Scandinavia, where governments follow the motto, protect workers, not jobs. That's a key distinction. But the mental balance question remains. Even if enough government help is forthcoming, it is far from clear whether billions of people could repeatedly reinvent themselves without losing their mental balance. Can we handle it?
Which brings us to the third category. What if we can't create enough jobs?
Exactly. What to do if, despite our best efforts, job losses significantly outstrip job creation. If that happens, we would have to explore new models for post-work societies, post-work economies, and post-work politics. Completely new paradigms. We have to honestly acknowledge that the social, economic, and political models we have inherited from the past are inadequate for dealing with such a challenge. They weren't built for this. Take communism, for example. As automation threatens to shake the capitalist system to its foundation, one might suppose that communism could make a comeback. Some people think that. But 20th century communism assumed that the working class was vital for the economy, and communist thinkers tried to teach the proletariat how to translate its immense economic power into political clout. Their political plan called for a working class revolution. But this leads us to wonder, how relevant will these teachings be if the masses lose their economic value and therefore need to struggle against irrelevance rather than against exploitation? How do you start a working class revolution without a working class? It fundamentally changes the equation.
That's a fascinating point. Some might argue, though, that humans could never become economically irrelevant because even if they can't compete with AI in the workplace, they'll always be needed as consumers, right? Someone
Well,
has to buy this stuff.
that's the common assumption, yes.
Yeah.
But it's far from certain that the future economy will need us even as consumers.
Yeah.
Machines and computers could do that too.
Really?
Well, what's truly compelling here is that, theoretically, you could have an economy in which a mining corporation produces and sells iron to a robotics corporation. The robotics corporation produces and sells robots to the mining corporation, which mines more iron, which is used to produce more robots, and so on. A closed loop. These corporations could grow and expand to the far reaches of the galaxy, and all they would need are robots and computers. They wouldn't need humans even to buy their products. Indeed, already today, computers and algorithms are beginning to function as clients in addition to producers. We see hints of this. In the stock exchange, for example, algorithms are becoming the most important buyers of bonds, shares, and commodities. They are the market in many ways. Similarly, in the advertisement business, the most important customer of all is an algorithm, the Google search algorithm. When people design web pages, they often cater to the taste of the Google search algorithm rather than to the taste of any human being. SEO is all about pleasing the algorithm. Publishers adapt book descriptions to the algorithm's taste, not human taste, because if we can just catch the eye of the algorithm, we can take the humans for granted. It prioritizes the machine. So if humans are needed neither as producers nor as consumers, what will safeguard their physical survival and their psychological well-being? That's the fundamental question. We cannot wait for the crisis to erupt in full force before we start looking for answers. By then it will be too late. In order to cope with the unprecedented technological and economic disruptions of the 21st century, we need to develop new social and economic models as soon as possible. These models should be guided by the principle of protecting humans rather than jobs. That has to be the focus. Many jobs are uninspiring drudgery, not worth saving. Nobody's life dream is to be a cashier, right? What we should focus on is providing for people's basic needs and protecting their social status and self-worth. That's the challenge.
Okay, so what kind of models are we talking about? Universal basic income comes up a lot. UBI. UBI proposes that governments tax the billionaires and corporations controlling the algorithms and robots and use the money to provide every person with a generous stipend covering his or her basic needs. This would cushion the poor against job loss and economic dislocation while theoretically protecting the rich from populist rage. Sort of a societal pressure valve. A related idea proposes to widen the range of human activities that are considered to be jobs. At present, billions of parents take care of children, neighbors look after one another, and citizens organize communities without any of these valuable activities being recognized as jobs in the formal economy. Maybe we need to turn a switch in our minds and realize that taking care of a child is arguably the most important and challenging job in the world. If so, there won't be a shortage of work, even if computers and robots replace all the drivers, bankers, and lawyers. It's just unpaid work now. The question is, of course, who would evaluate and pay for these newly recognized jobs? Assuming that 6-month-old babies won't pay a salary to their mums, the government will probably have to take this upon itself. And assuming, too, that we would want these salaries to cover all of a family's basic needs, the end result will be something not very different from universal basic income anyway. It kind of leads back there. Alternatively, governments could subsidize universal basic services, or UBS, rather than income. Instead of giving money to people who then shop around for whatever they want, the government might subsidize free education, free healthcare, free transport, and so forth. This is, in fact, the utopian vision of communism achieved by other means, perhaps. It's debatable whether it's better to provide people with universal basic income, which some call the capitalist paradise, or universal basic services, the communist paradise. Both options have advantages and drawbacks, but no matter which paradise you choose, the real problem is in defining what universal and basic actually mean. The devil's in the details.
Exactly. This leads us to wonder, what do universal and basic really mean in practice? When people speak about universal basic support, whether in the shape of income or services, they usually mean national basic support. That's how it's being tested now. Hitherto meaning up until now, all UBI initiatives have been strictly national or municipal. For example, in January 2017, Finland began a 2-year experiment, providing 2,000 unemployed Finns with €560 a month, irrespective of whether they found work or not. Similar experiments are underway, or have been, in the Canadian province of Ontario, in the Italian city of Livorno, and in several Dutch cities. Small-scale trials. But the problem with such national and municipal schemes is that the main victims of automation may not live in Finland, Ontario, or Livorno. Automation is global. Globalization has made people in one country utterly dependent on markets in other countries, but automation might unravel large parts of this global trade network with disastrous consequences for the weakest links. In the 20th century, developing countries lacking natural resources made economic progress mainly by selling the cheap labor of their unskilled workers. That was the model. Today, millions of Bangladeshis make a living by producing shirts and selling them to customers in the United States, while people in Bangalore earn their keep in call centers, dealing with the complaints of American customers.
Right. But with the rise of AI, robots, and 3D printers, cheap, unskilled labor would become far less important, wouldn't it? Instead of manufacturing a shirt in Dhaka and shipping it all the way to the US, you could buy the shirt's code online from Amazon and print it in New York. Localized production. The Zara and Prada stores on Fifth Avenue could be replaced by 3D printing centers in Brooklyn, and some people might even have a printer at home eventually. Simultaneously, instead of calling customer services in Bangalore to complain about your printer, you could talk with an AI representative in the Google Cloud whose accent and tone of voice are tailored to your preferences. No need for the call center. The newly unemployed workers and call center operators in Dhaka and Bangalore don't have the education necessary to switch to designing fashionable shirts or writing computer code, so how will they survive? What happens to them?
That's the multi-trillion-dollar question. If AI and 3D printers indeed take over from Bangladeshis and Bangaloreans, the revenues that previously flowed to South Asia will now fill the coffers of a few tech giants in California, or wherever they're based. Wealth concentration. Instead of economic growth improving conditions all over the world, we might see immense new wealth created in high-tech hubs such as Silicon Valley, while many developing countries collapse. A widening chasm. Of course, some emerging economies, including India and Bangladesh, might advance fast enough to join the winning team. It's possible. Given enough time, the children or grandchildren of textile workers and call center operators might well become the engineers and entrepreneurs who build and own the computers and 3D printers. But the time to make such a transition is running out. The window is closing. In the past, cheap, unskilled labor has served as a secure bridge across the global economic divide, and even if a country advanced slowly, it could expect to reach safety eventually. There was a path. Taking the right steps was more important than making speedy progress. But now the bridge is shaking, and soon it might collapse. Those who have already crossed it, graduating from cheap labor to high-skill industries, will probably be okay. They've made it. But those lagging behind might find themselves stuck on the wrong side of the chasm without any means of crossing over. What do you do when nobody needs your cheap, unskilled laborers, and you don't have the resources to build a good education system and teach them new skills? What then will be the fate of the stragglers? Would American voters agree that taxes paid by Amazon and Google for the U.S. business should be sent to support unemployed people in places defined, rather unfortunately, by President Trump as shithole countries, it seems? Politically unlikely, let's say. If you believe that's going to happen easily, you might just as well believe that Santa Claus and the Easter Bunny will solve the problem. The political will seems absent.
Okay, so that's the universal part. What about basic? How do we define basic needs? Universal basic support is meant to take care of basic human needs, but there is no accepted definition for that, is there? From a purely biological perspective, a human needs just 1,500, 2,500 calories per day to survive. Anything more is a luxury, technically. Yet, over and above this biological poverty line, every culture in history has defined additional needs as basic. It's culturally determined. In medieval Europe, access to church services was seen as even more important than food because it took care of your eternal soul rather than your ephemeral body. Priorities change. In today's Europe, decent education and healthcare services are considered basic human needs, and some argue that even access to the internet is now essential for every person. It's become infrastructure. If, in 2050, the United World Government agrees to tax Google, Amazon, Baidu, and Tencent to provide basic support for every human being on Earth in Dhaka as well as in Detroit, how will they define basic?
A huge challenge. For example, what does basic education include? Just reading and writing, or also composing computer code and playing the violin? Where do you draw the line? Just 6 years of elementary school, or everything up to a PhD? What level is basic? And what about healthcare? If by 2050 medical advances make it possible to slow down aging processes and significantly extend human lifespans, will the new treatments be available to all 10 billion humans on the planet, or just to a few billionaires? That's a major ethical dilemma. If biotechnology enables parents to upgrade their children, would this be considered a basic human need? Or would we see humankind splitting into different biological castes, with rich superhumans enjoying abilities that far surpass those of poor Homo sapiens? The stuff of sci-fi, but potentially real. This means even if some universal support scheme provides poor people in 2050 with much better healthcare and education than today, they might still be extremely angry about global inequality and the lack of social mobility. Relative deprivation is powerful. People will feel that the system is rigged against them, that the government serves only the super rich, and that the future will be even worse for them and their children. What's truly compelling here is that Homo sapiens is just not built for satisfaction. We adapt. Human happiness depends less on objective conditions and more on our own expectations. Expectations, however, tend to adapt to conditions, including to the conditions of other people. We compare ourselves constantly. When things improve, expectations balloon, and consequently even dramatic improvements in conditions might leave us as dissatisfied as before. The hedonic treadmill. So if universal basic support is aimed at improving the objective conditions of the average person in 2050, it has a fair chance of succeeding. It could raise the floor. But if it is aimed at making people subjectively more satisfied with their lot and preventing social discontent, it is likely to fail. Happiness is more complicated than just meeting basic needs.
So, what does this all mean for us? It sounds like just giving people money or services isn't enough. To truly achieve its goals, universal basic support will have to be supplemented by some meaningful pursuits, ranging from sports to religion, maybe, something to give life structure and purpose beyond just consumption. Perhaps the most successful experiment so far in how to live a contented life in a post-work world has been conducted in Israel. It's an interesting case study. There, about 50% of ultra-Orthodox Jewish men never work in the traditional sense. They dedicate their lives to studying holy scriptures and performing religious rituals. They and their families don't starve, partly because the wives often work, partly because the government provides them with generous subsidies and free services, making sure that they don't lack the basic necessities of life. That's universal basic support, or UBS, avant la lettre, literally, before the letter, meaning a precursor to the concept itself. They've been doing it for years. Despite being poor and unemployed by conventional standards, in survey after survey, these ultra-Orthodox Jewish men report higher levels of life satisfaction than any other section of Israeli society. That's remarkable. This is due to the strength of their community bonds, as well as to the deep meaning they find in studying scriptures and performing rituals. Meaning and community are key. A small room full of Jewish men discussing the Talmud might well generate more joy, engagement, and insight than a huge textile sweatshop full of hardworking factory hands. It's a different kind of productivity. In global surveys of life satisfaction, Israel is usually somewhere near the top, thanks in part to the contribution of these jobless poor people to the national average.
It's a provocative model. While secular Israelis often complain bitterly that the ultra-Orthodox don't contribute enough to society in economic terms and live off other people's hard work, and argue that their way of life is unsustainable, especially as ultra-Orthodox families have 7 children on average, it might be just the reverse. As robots and AI push humans out of the job market, the ultra-Orthodox Jews may come to be seen as the model of the future rather than as a fossil from the past. It flips the perspective. Not that everyone will become Orthodox Jews and go to the yeshivas to study the Talmud, of course. That's not the point. But in the lives of all people, the quest for meaning and for community might eclipse the quest for a job. Our priorities might need to shift fundamentally. If we manage to combine a universal economic safety net with strong communities and meaningful pursuits, losing our jobs to the algorithms might actually turn out to be a blessing in disguise for human well-being.
That's a hopeful note. But if we connect this to the bigger picture, there's a much scarier scenario lurking beneath the surface, isn't there?
Yes. Losing control over our lives. That, I think, is a far more frightening prospect than simply losing our jobs. Notwithstanding the danger of mass unemployment, what we should worry about even more is the shift in authority from humans to algorithms. This shift might destroy any remaining faith in what we call the liberal story, the long-held belief in individual autonomy, freedom, and democratic choice, potentially paving the way for digital dictatorships. This is the ultimate challenge that goes far beyond career development or even new economic models. It's about who or what is in charge.
Right. So we've journeyed through AI's potential to disrupt job markets and human skills, uncovered the non-human advantages of connectivity and upgradability, peered into the potentially fleeting nature of human-only bastions like care and creativity, and grappled with the paradox of new jobs that demand high skills and come with high volatility. We covered a lot of ground. Finally, we've explored the essential societal reimagining required, from universal basic income to new models for finding meaning beyond work. This deep dive was about providing you with a shortcut to being well informed about the hardest trials humanity faces regarding career development and future suggestions, not just what to expect, but how to fundamentally think about your place in this evolving world.
And this raises an important question for you, our listener, to consider as we wrap up. While we've discussed the massive implications for our jobs and our societies, we've also touched on something even more fundamental: the human need for meaning and belonging. Consider this. If future algorithms can perfectly predict our desires, curate our experiences, and even compose our deepest art, what then becomes of genuine human choice and authentic connection? Where does free will fit in? If the ultimate goal is human well-being, is it better to be unemployed but meaningfully engaged in a strong community? Or to have a job but live under the invisible hand of an algorithmic authority where our very emotions can be subtly manipulated for our own supposed good or for someone else's profit? Think about the difference between losing your job to an algorithm and losing control over your life to one. Which prospect should genuinely keep you awake at night?